Hello, adventurers. Welcome to another episode of the Our Offbeat Life podcast. Today, we are thrilled to be chatting with the amazing Colleen Kelly, a traveler. She's a writer who, along with her husband, Jim, and their three young adventurers, created their day-to-day life for a year long, I think over a year long, of exploring Mexico, Central and South America, all while working full time. So, hello, Colleen.
No.
Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, great. Yeah, it was about a year and a half, and we are back at home in Pittsburgh, and it's beautiful summer day.
Very cool. Very cool. Yes, I love being able to talk over these distances. We're
Mhm.
currently in Argentina. You're all the way up in Pittsburgh.
Mm.
So it's pretty cool. For those who aren't familiar with you at all, can you give people a little background about who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Colleen. My husband is Jim. We have three kids. They are now 9, 5, and 4. But when we left on the trip, this will take some math, they were 6, 3, and had just turned 2. And we left our home in Pittsburgh with the intent to drive to and from Costa Rica on the Pan Am. And plans changed along the way, which was great. But we did journey for about a year and a half, a few different methods, changing time frames, and just kind of kept things in flux. But it was an awesome adventure.
Awesome, awesome. Was it always supposed to be a year and a half or a short-term one, or was it gonna be longer?
Yeah, the our initial timeline was about a year and a half. However, during that time, we did both extend it and shorten it at different times, depending on how our needs or desires were changing. And then in the end, we did kind of hit our target. But yeah, so we just kind of kept adapting.
Yes, that's the name of the game with family travel is
Yeah.
adapting, yes.
Yeah.
What led you up to taking your family on such an epic adventure? Driving
Yeah.
North and Central America. It sounds daunting to people.
Yeah. It does sound daunting. And it was to us. Maybe like we cheated a little. I had some experience in the area, as did my husband, separately and together. So we always knew we wanted to travel, but we did kind of pick lands that we were familiar with to kind of ease into it a bit. So I started traveling on my own about 15 years ago, Costa Rica, Mexico, Guatemala. When Jim and I met, we did Ecuador, Colombia, Peru. And so when we started our family, we kind of just knew that we had to give we were so wowed by our own experiences and impressions that we knew we had to share that with our kids because it was so incredible. So, and we really wanted to expose them to ideas that, there are many places, many people. The US is not the only version of truth and things like that. So we wanted to prepare new foods, learn new languages. And so we knew we had to get them out there to see it, to experience it. Yeah. And it was awesome.
That is awesome, yeah. So your past travel dictated to you your future travel. I mean, you knew what you liked, you knew what you wanted.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But then it was
Yeah.
obviously different with kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So it was interesting because some of the things when I was solo backpacking as a late 20 something that were not my favorite things at the time turned out to be some of my favorite things that we were doing as a family. So that revisiting kind of even tied myself together full circle as a traveler because it was a whole new experience, even though I'd been there before.
yes, I would imagine that would change it quite a bit.
Yeah.
What did you end up doing for education for each of your kids, throughout this time frame?
Yeah. So one thing I was grateful for was that 2 of our kids were pretty young, and so they were not officially school age, and that kind of going into this, it's like, that's the big question, right? What about school? And so having only one of them school age kind of released the burden of that a little bit because the other two, we were fine. Like traveling was the only school, and that was fantastic. But with our oldest, we did have her enrolled in like a virtual private school. She had an assigned curriculum, but it was still very parent coached. And we did do that for the nearly 2 years that we were out traveling. Turns out we're like really just kind of dedicated homeschoolers, and now this year we are just homeschooling. So we've let go of the let go of the virtual school entirely to really focus more on kind of self-led education. So the whole child education thing, and now my second is also school age as well, and we're also homeschooling her. So it was kind of a transition that, we like COVID kind of pushed us into resisting the traditional school method. We did virtual, now we're doing homeschool, and throughout that, feel like we found our place.
Very interesting, yeah. And a lot of people in the US are familiar with homeschooling, a little less so with child-led learning. And
Yeah.
people which we meet all around the world, it's very foreign concept taking your kid out of school. So, like, was it just the COVID that led you into this lifestyle, or before you had kids, were you thinking of this lifestyle of homeschooling and child-led learning?
Yeah, so we had begun planning our trip in 2019. And when I say begun planning, I mean kind of making sure our finances were in order, looking for that remote work that we felt was key to really being successful. But the education piece we had not figured out yet. That COVID was kind of the protagonist for that piece, and it just turned out to work perfectly for us. So,
Good, that's good when the pieces kind of fall
yeah.
together to your
Mhm.
lifestyle, to the way your kids learn. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when we last chatted IRL, we were in
Yeah.
Costa Rica together. What was that, about a year ago? I think you were planning on putting your van in storage to take to the skies and explore South America.
Yep.
How did that adventure unfold?
Yeah. So that was kind of the first piece where we felt like we had to kind of majorly adapt to something. When we got to Costa Rica, the initial plan was to turn around, but we did not feel done in a lot of ways. We wanted to keep going. We wanted to keep seeing more. We wanted to see things that were new to everybody. We kind of slowly introduced ourselves to full-time travel by going to places we'd had already been, but we were ready for more. So we decided to store the van and fly to South America. Also, we were running up against our deadline for time and also our budget. So we thought that this would be an economical way to see more while um, also kind of saving some money. Now that turned out to not be true. It was not less expensive, but it did save time. And, it was just amazing. Probably one of the things that stick most in our mind as we kind of reflect on our travels now is that stark difference from Costa Rica to Peru in
Oh,
landscape, because tropical to desert is just like such an awesome reminder of how big the world is, how vast and varied it is, and how the landscape affects the cultures. And so, like, this is probably one of the things that remains the most. That was a result of this decision to store the van and start taking flights. Bureaucratically, it was a regular challenge, just like all things are when you're crossing borders and storing cars with, the government. But it worked out fine.
that's cool. So you ended up going through which countries by air? By air.
Yeah, so we did southern Lima and southern Peru and Chile by air. One international flight between Peru and Chile, and then a lot of commuter flights within those countries. I think our flight total was about 13 flights, and that was over just 3 or 4 months. Like, I don't know, 13 weeks or something. So it was pretty. It was pretty intense. It was a lot of flights with a lot of kids. So
Yeah. Yes, I could imagine. 13 flights for like 3 months or so. Wow. Well,
yeah,
then,
yeah,
having driven and flown through the America journey,
yes.
which one do you prefer and why?
Yeah. So I think we talk about this among ourselves because it was both were really cool in their own ways. I think the The restriction of driving was that you kind of had to pick a route. And if you were going to deviate from that, it was a huge change in the amount of time you were going to spend. Flying, we got to go to places maybe we wouldn't have been able to because it was, an hour flight, but it could have been a 20-hour drive on mountain roads. So we got to kind of get out there and see more than I think we would have, not being forced to like pick a certain route. But at the same time, we lost a lot of flexibility with 3 kids, having to get them to airports on time with the amount of luggage, not forgetting things at your Airbnb constantly. That was a bit of a logistical challenge. And driving allowed us to really see things the way that they are when you're driving through villages and on the roads and, seeing the sunset and sunrise as you're driving. It's just incredible. So our preference, again, should we do it again, would probably be to drive. But I think if your kids are older and you want to fly, that's totally okay. Our hesitancy there would just be the amount of luggage that young kids require.
Yes, they do require some unique things. Like, what did you end up taking with you when you left, like, the van behind to fly? Like, what made the roster?
Yeah, that was packing was probably the most difficult, consistently most difficult thing because you're going through different seasons, different terrains, different altitude, and that's constantly changing. So I think when we left, we started with in our 2007 Honda Odyssey 27 pieces of luggage of various sizes, day bag, some small day bags, whatever, but coolers, all kinds of things. By the time we came home, that was reduced by half because as we go, we shedded some things that were unnecessary. When we stored the van, things that we kind of considered too precious to leave, but too valuable to travel with on airplanes, like our guitars and our extra computer monitors for work, things like that. We wound up shipping back to the US
Hmm,
before we stored the van. Things that made the cut were like absolute necessities. We had it pared down to 5 bags for our South America leg. We needed the kids to be able to help carry stuff. So that was what can they fit in their backpack? That's a tablet and a coloring book. And like that's all that made it. Clothes, things that we were a lot more willing during that part because we were limited in space to kind of be flexible and maybe buy or pick up things that we needed along the way. Whereas before we tried a bit more to work with what we had. I think that changed a little bit.
cool, okay. Yeah, kids change the mix, of what you end up taking and what they can carry themselves, because especially young kids, you don't want it to be
Yeah.
too heavy of a bag, and then they complain or
Right.
can't, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I under totally understand that. So, that's
Yeah.
some of the logistics, but I'd love to hear some of your most unforgettable experiences, these moments from the journey. Do you have any hidden gems or any
Yeah.
challenges?
So probably, I think, kind of like I said, the Atacama was the most impressive thing to us. Jim and I and the kids grew up in temperate forested places. This was our norm and had never been exposed to anything like that. Our kind of gem was Paracas, Peru, and just got to experience landscape and climate that you can't understand its existence until you're in it. And it was just fascinating. We were there during sandstorm season. That was just incredible when, it's just raining sand. And then just the adventure, the dune buggy rides, the wildlife that was so different than the tropical places we'd come from. So I think for us that was our gem. That was the one that we found that was like, yeah, we're so glad we did this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's more than just like a family vacation. It sounds like it's a lifestyle, being a digital nomad for a year and a half or more. So, how would you describe it or describe the differences between taking a family trip and doing this lifestyle of immersing yourself like this?
Yeah. So, I mean, major differences are you're doing what you do at home. So, we're going to the grocery store or markets. We're talking to our neighbors the best that we can. Like we're we're getting gas, it's just it's living. So everything that you do at home, you just do somewhere else. And all of those tiny things just add up to an experience that you learn from. Some things are challenging that you don't expect, like access to clean water. That is something that we take for granted, that you can't take for granted. And similarly, reverse, I love the safety measures in the US that don't exist elsewhere. So, so it just depends, but you live your life and you live it among people who are living their lives. And it's not a vacation.
Yeah, that's putting it succinctly. It's definitely not a vacation.
Yeah.
What are some resources that were really helpful during the planning process for full-time travel?
Yeah. So I didn't use a ton of resources. There are some Facebook groups, websites, and things like that that are out there for people to rely on. But for us, it was it felt like such a personal thing. We didn't really want to do it anyone else's way. So when I think of the planning, for us, it was more kind of about coming up with our budget. But again, that was so personal because that is going to look different depending on your family and how you travel, how much you want to go out and do. And yeah, and it was a very democratic process. So when we were deciding where to go and what things we wanted to prioritize doing, we asked the kids and we took their opinions into account. And so they were a very active part of all the activities that we chose. So yeah, I don't know that we depended a lot on outside resources. I felt like all of our resources just kind of came from within our family and we grouped them together so that we could make it our best journey.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I know that Jim worked as a full-time remote employee for a company in the US
Yeah.
throughout this time. Were
Yeah.
there any restrictions to or challenges in your travels because of his like W-2 employment status?
So that was kind of a tricky thing. And actually, we both started out working full time remote for the same company. And I, about halfway in, decided that we needed my time to be focused more on planning the travel and focusing with the kids, because planning the travel alone is a huge job. So we, decided to kind of divert some of that energy. And I know that there are like tons of secret nomads out there. And I'm not going to say too much because my husband still works for this company, but there were no problems. So there were some very vague restrictions in place, but we did not come up against anything that was truly restrictive. So there were tools that are out there that we used to make sure that he could work where he needed to work and when he needed to work. And that meant, time changes, VPNs, things like that. But it wasn't a problem. When they finally did 12, 15 months into our journey, kind of start to restrict that more, that's when we really, at the same time, start to respond by trying to get home more quickly.
Mm,
So the last few months, the last 3 months of our trip were very quick. Whereas we spent nearly a year getting to Costa Rica, we spent about 6 weeks getting home from Costa Rica. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. But so yeah, we just kind of rolled with it. Wasn't off the table, wasn't sanctioned, but we just rolled with it.
okay, okay. How was the time difference for him for working? Was that difficult to balance for meeting schedules or deadlines or anything like that while traveling?
It was a little tricky. Thankfully, it wasn't huge. I think that at one point, I think the most we had was just a 2-hour difference. So it was fine to manage and also kind of helpful actually in some ways because it actually freed up some more time for us either in the morning or in the afternoon to actually go out and do activities as a family before or after the workday began. So we kind of just seized that opportunity to just make it a good thing.
Okay. And one of the things I always hear from people that are thinking about doing this type of lifestyle, maybe it's a gap year, gap 2
Yeah.
years, something like that. How do they how do people finance this? Like, what did you guys do to go on this? Were you just living on your normal money? Did you have a nest egg? Did you budget properly? What did you do?
Yeah, so we took this was probably something that we were the most careful about as far as planning. So we kind of had a varied approach. We own our home in Pittsburgh. For us, it was important for us to keep that. We wanted the security of if should we need to come home, that that was there for us. So we did keep our home, although tons of people don't. And I think we should have not in the end. But so we did keep our home. We had some investments spread out. We had a nest egg and, reasonable. And then we both had regular income for the first 3 quarters of the trip. When I started freelancing, it was regular coupled with freelancing income, variable. But we felt most secure just by having a fair amount of money in different places. And we spent a couple years making sure that we had that because that was our security. It's not that for everybody, but that was ours.
Okay, okay. And tell us about like the freelancing. How did you get into that? Is it something that is for everybody or like some people are like, "Ooh, look, I could work on the road writing?"
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So thankfully, we were financially secure enough that it was a good time for me to say, I'll try this. And traveling has always been my lifeblood. I was so inspired on the road that I was like, well, now is my time to write. That had been the dream. So, for me, it just started out by I just was reaching out to my networks, places that I knew, kind of what they call cold pitching and saying, hey, do you need some help? And it kind of grew from there. I think if you have the full time to dedicate yourself to being a freelancer, then it is successful. As a mother, of 3, as, a family manager, I don't have full-time resources to dedicate to freelancing. So in my position, I wouldn't say, that I could rely on it solely. Should we do it again, we would still very much rely on the W-2 income. But I think for a lot of people, it's totally possible if you can really dedicate yourself to it. It's just a lot of background work.
Very cool. Okay. And now kind of settling back in after
Yeah.
such an extraordinary journey. How was the transition back to life in the US for everybody? Kids, both of y'all?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the coolest things to see was the kids transition throughout the trip and then transition back to home and to see them thriving regardless. In any scenario, they were thriving. And so, it for us in the end, it's just a win win. We were worried that they would struggle to adjust along the way. We were worried they would struggle to adjust when we got home. They haven't struggled more than kids struggle with day-to-day things, already. So it's been very normal, and I think we've intentionally normalized it. But it's yeah, it's been great for them. They haven't really had any trouble adjusting. We're back in the full swing of jam-packed American lifestyle, and it is what it is. It's fine. For Jem, he's so go with the flow. He kind of really misses the freedom of just being out there. Things are really structured, and that was hard to adjust to the really rigid structure here. And then for me, I'm just not good at being stagnant at all. So I just feel like I have to be out there and see and experience it. So I think it's been the hardest for me. I also was the one to kind of spearhead this. So that makes sense. So, I'm always planning the next trip. I'm always ready to get out there.
What's gonna be the next one that you're working on?
Yeah, I think probably a similar length road trip, but through Europe. That's what
Ooh,
we're leaning
Europe.
towards. Yeah.
You gonna do car, plane, train, a
Yeah,
little bit of both?
car, I think.
Car?
Probably car and train a little bit. We can't jump back into planes quite yet, but
No.
yeah.
Okay, okay. And, let's see, talking about other families, there's a lot of families that I've talked to that are listening that are looking at getting into this lifestyle, and they're considering that similar path, maybe going through Central and South America. Can you share some
Mhm.
helpful tips?
Yeah. So I think it depends. Uh, I'm like a sort of super planner type person. So my struggle at first was kind of worrying about all of the details. So the medical care, mechanics, friends for the kids, language immersion. And before we left, it was so easy for me to focus on those things. Once you're there and out there and doing it, day to day life is so interesting and beautiful that all of those things that you thought were going to be so important really turn out not to matter that much. So, for anyone who is kind of a planner like me and worried about details, my advice would be to not dwell on that as much as you think you need to, because they work themselves out. The one time we needed medical care, x-rays cost $22. Like we didn't use the insurance that we spent time looking for, you know? So just things like that, to not really worry about what it's going to turn out to be like. And then the kids, they're so resilient. They'll find friends anywhere. They'll pick up the language quicker than you expect. You know, before you know it, they'll be out playing with residents of the neighborhoods, and you'll meet friends along the way that you'll feel so aligned with and connected to that you'll kind of know through the rest of your life. And that's an awesome thing for the kids to always know that those people are always out there too. Yeah, there's this forgiveness when you're on the road because everyone's out there doing the same thing. And so it's so nice to have that, to feel that grace towards yourself and towards others, knowing that you're all sharing it and you're all in it. Yeah. So my advice is just kind of to put your faith in the process.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like you found a new community while you were traveling. Was that intentional? Did you seek out community, or were you finding people along the way as you went?
So, I would kind of just reach out to Facebook groups, both those that were global or for expats in the communities, and found people to hang out with that way. And sometimes those relationships were for an afternoon and it was awesome. And sometimes they lasted longer and will last. And so it's yeah, the community is out there and it feels great when your kids especially meet people that are out there doing a similar thing because it really helps them understand that their experience is totally validated and normal and there are other people out there having an adventurous life.
Yeah. I remember when our kids met, and it was then they were together for a couple of hours, and it was hard to even separate them at the end,
Yeah,
that first
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, it's so great. Yeah,
So, I mean, kids latch on together. They build relationships so easily. So so that kind of makes me think about advice for balancing the work, the travel, the
yeah,
family time, so that type of thing while on the road. Do you have any
yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that was, another one of the things that was just kind of like, started out as a bit of a worry and just kind of melted away because especially long term, it works itself out. So we just made sure that we were constantly communicating and constantly being flexible with one another. So if there were meetings, if there were live classes, most of the time we worked our schedules around them. But if we couldn't, then that was okay too. And thankfully, people were supportive if we had to miss something because it was a travel day. So we just really just kind of went with the flow, and we also tried to make sure that we were balancing our activities with our downtime. That was difficult at first because when you start, you kind of have a bucket list of things and it feels a bit more like vacation, but as it rolls out a bit more, you learn or remind yourself that you're living and the downtime is just as important as getting out. And it's okay if you don't see that fifth ruin. It's okay if, the kids just want to watch a movie, even though they're in Peru. Like, this is fine. So it did take a few months, but finding that balance, the life balance among all these things, the same kind of life balance you would have at home, just apply that to your time on the road and it'll be fine.
Nice, very, very nice. What was on that bucket list when you left originally?
Oh, so, we kind of left that up to the kids because we had done a lot of it. So personally, so it was really cool to let them kind of lead that way. They all had different interests. So for our oldest, she's very much into wildlife. So we had to anything that came up with animals was a must see for her. So we did turtles and whales and dolphins and flamingos, and so it was everything. And then our middle daughter, she's super into space and astronomy, so we had to do Chile, and we spent, I think it was, gosh, 2 or 3 weeks just in the Valley of the Stars in Chile, just kind of exploring that area because she was so happy to be there. We didn't need to move on. And then our youngest, he was a bit on the young side, but he loved anything with boats and beaches. So anytime we came upon something and there's the flexibility, it's like, all right, well, we're just going to do this boat ride now because, he's going to love it. So yeah, so it was great. Probably our top activities was dune buggy rides. We swam in bioluminescent waters, tons of ruins. Machu Picchu was fantastic. And then, yeah, exploring the Atacama. Catarpe is a beautiful canyon in the Atacama. Just tons of amazing things.
Yeah, that's cool. What do the kids still talk about now that you've been back for a little bit?
Yeah. So kind of the similar stuff, and then we're so fond of everything. We have pictures all over, so our photos, our digital photo frames prompt a lot of discussion. "Oh, do you remember that? You remember that? You remember that?" They really remember things that would stand out to them at home, holidays, birthdays, things like that, that, had different blends of traditions were really interesting to them, and those are things that we still talk about. Also the foods, different foods that we came across. "Do you remember when mom accidentally ate ants?" That kinda stuff, like, just the funny moments, all the stuff kids love.
Yes, yes. Oh, you gotta love the food. There is so many different things. Sometimes you're, uh, and regret it, sometimes you love it.
Yeah.
Whi which country had the best food?
Ooh, yeah, that just Mexico, hands down.
Mexico? How about the worst?
Yeah, I am hesitant to say, but I was not a fan. I'm vegetarian, so countries that were very meat centric were difficult, but overall, probably I was not a fan of Nicaragua food. I'm not a big fan of Costa Rican food, and also Chile would be at the bottom.
Okay, okay. But Mexico's at your
Yeah,
top. What was it about
Mexico.
Mexican food?
I fell in love with one particular thing that changed my world, and that is salsa macha, which is just this incredible blend of chili oil and sesame seeds and chopped peanuts and garlic, and it is a condiment in the Chiapas state that I put on everything now. It's hard to find at home, but I found it.
Alright. There you go.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing. Travelers always remember the food. Uh,
Yeah.
we might sometimes get, ruined out, so to speak,
Yeah.
but we don't get fooded out.
We don't get food at that. I will always go to that restaurant. Anyone.
Alright, alright. And I know earlier you mentioned that you had a healthcare scare, you had to get
Mhm.
X-rays. How did you handle healthcare, when you were traveling? Like, what was the big issues that came up?
Yeah, so I think we were very lucky. There are so many agencies that offer it, but we did get international health insurance that would cover us. And for us, it was like just kind of in case of emergency situation, you need to get helicoptered out of there, something like that. Super unlikely. But we had it. Full disclosure, we did not renew it our second year. Healthcare was so inexpensive, and we felt quality enough that we weren't concerned should we need care again. We had one situation, our daughter was running, fell, bumped her head, pretty standard. She was 4. So we took her in just to make sure, and she was fine. But yeah, it was like $22. We have the X-rays to keep. It's one of our souvenirs. It was just, and it was so easy. It took, I think it was about an hour and a half to get in, get out, get home. She's fine. So things like that, just kind of unheard of in the US regarding both cost and time of care. So we experienced that early on enough, unfortunately, but fortunately, that we were not worried about it going forward.
Okay, that's cool. At least you wouldn't
Yeah.
have to worry about it going forward. With 3 kids, accidents happen.
Yeah, accidents happen. Yeah. And they happened about the same rate and severity as they would have in our own home, we felt like. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we were a little bit more vigilant. There are some things that don't exist with the same frequency, like railings on stairs, for example. Takes an extra eye, but you get used to looking for that kind of stuff.
Okay. Okay. And finally, I mean, looking back, would
Yeah.
you change anything about your journey?
I would not have ended our journey.
Yeah.
I would I wish, I wish we
Daggone
would
work.
have. Yeah, I wish we would have sold the house, but I think we also have pets at home, so we're very attached, and we had wonderful house sitters that cared for our home and our pets and our plants, so I think that's a big thing for families who have pets that they don't wanna leave behind, so that is really hard, and so we chose to have the house sitters. I, feel like we had a lot more endurance in us. I feel like the benefits that we were receiving, both learning, experiential, like getting closer as a family. I don't think that our journey was quite done in those regards. I think we could have done it for a few more years happily. But yeah, but otherwise no, there's nothing I would change. I don't think you have regrets when you take an adventure like this. It's just, it's amazing and there's challenges and can't always be safe, then that's never fun.
Yeah, that's true. Touching on the house sitter part, I didn't know about that. So since
Yeah.
you didn't sell your home and
Yeah.
you had the house sitters, was it the same house sitters for the entirety? And how did you
Yeah.
find them? Family, friends, the service?
Yeah, so I shouted out to my personal Facebook network and was like, "Hey, anybody know of anybody?" We got really lucky that a friend of a friend were looking for a place. They, were looking to settle in somewhere themselves, build their own businesses, save up their own money, and they were great people and we just got really lucky and they were there the whole time. So,
Wow,
yeah.
that's excellent. So you put the feelers out, you found somebody, it worked out well. Did they end up having to pay rent or was it just an equal exchange for taking care of the pets in the house?
Yeah, I think people do it all sorts of ways, but ours was, they paid their utilities, but we
Okay.
continued to pay our mortgage. They paid their own utilities and basically free housing in exchange for taking care of our 11 animals.
11 animals.
Yeah.
So many animals.
Well, actually, it was less at the time. It's 11 now. I think it was more like 9, but many of them are chickens, super low key. So,
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
any new additions while you were gone?
We brought a dog home with us from Costa Rica.
Oh,
Her name is Isabella. Yeah, I think as you travel, you see some things that are different and you'll feel great about some of them. Some of them will make you feel sad. We felt particular sadness for all of the many street dogs and cats, but it's super common. It is I think we're very prone to feeling sadness for these things, but it is very common. I would not say that all of these animals have difficult lives. Many of them do, but we did decide to bring a dog home from us that we adopted from a farm in Costa Rica. And so we drove back with her. It was cool. There was extra paperwork and things like that crossing all the borders with the dogs. It took probably twice as long for each one as
whew.
with just the family. So that was hard. We had a short time to do it because her health certificate was only 10 days long. We had to get from Costa Rica to Mexico in 10 days.
So this was on
So
the
it was,
return trip.
yeah. So it was very speedy. We did Honduras in 6 days. So it was quick. But yeah, but she's here with us now and she's another wonderful souvenir from our adventure.
That's amazing, yeah. If we didn't house sit for other people and their pets, I could tell you there's
Yeah.
so many times I would be pushing to adopt one of these pets.
I know. I know. I made the
I
mistake of
know.
jumping out of my car and touching one once, and I was like, "Oh my god." Yeah,
Yeah, they kinda grow in
it's
your heart.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Alright, alright. Well, let's do this, a little bit of a lightning round.
Oh, all right. I'm nervous. All right.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee all the
Ah,
way. Although I
Yes.
do love tea, but I can't go without coffee.
All right, then bonus question for that then. Best country you found coffee in while you were traveling?
Oh, man. Okay, so much is said about many coffee regions, and I experienced great coffee in many places, but I am partial to Guatemalan coffee. And I don't think this is gonna come up, so I'll just say Peru has some of the best salt. If you love salt, Peru is where you wanna get your salt.
Okay, very good. Worst coffee?
Oh, so one of the strange things is that many places in Central America, despite the amazing wealth of coffee that they have on all these volcanic soils, is that many people still drink Nescafe, which is an instant coffee for those who don't know. And it is totally fine in a pinch, no judgment. But we probably saw that the most. Gosh, probably the smaller ones like El Salvador. And El Salvador has fantastic coffee, but we saw it, I think, quite a bit in Airbnbs. And also we saw it quite a bit in Chile.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing that I've not gotten used to either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but they ship out all the best coffee. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm a bit of a snob. We traveled with our French press, so we were pretty pretty serious.
there you go. All right, as an animal person, let's narrow it down. Cat or dog?
I'm a cat person. I will not speak for the rest of my family, though.
Okay. Pool or beach?
Ooh, I have a little bit of an ocean fear. So for me, with my kids, I would go with pool, but absolutely, my kids love the beach.
Very cool. Now, would you rather be able to speak and understand every language in the world or be able to teleport anywhere at any time?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to go with the language thing. I think that I I I would be even more motivated to kind of fund my own adventures if there was no language barrier. I would be in Vietnam tomorrow.
There you go. Okay. Now, imagine this. You get off the plane, your next destination in Europe. You arrive to the zombie apocalypse. You're able
Thankfully.
to you're able to get to your bags. What's the first thing you would grab and why?
If I'm not able to get to my bags,
You are able to get to your
I am
bags.
able to get to my bags. Oh my gosh. I feel like this is such a boring answer. This is like a mom answer. Like I would just grab like so I was always really meticulous about packing an emergency bag. So I would just grab my emergency bag that has a very organized spare set of clothes and toothbrush and all the stuff that we would need to like get through a day or two. That's boring.
That's that's all right. That's a
That's
mom
boring.
answer. There you
I'm a
go.
mom.
All right, now, sir, your travel trivia. Which ancient civilization built the famous city of Teotihuacan in Mexico?
Oh, that was Incan, right?
Hmm? Incans a little bit further south. Aztecs.
Aztecs. Okay. Fail. We
All
actually
right.
didn't go to that one in my defense.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, you skipped
No.
it this time. What is the official language of Guatemala?
Spanish.
Ding, ding, ding. There you go.
One tough.
Coast Costa Rica is home to one of the slowest animals in the world. Can you guess its name?
Sloth.
A sloth. Very good.
Okay. I was like, if you're looking for a species, I don't know.
No. Peru is famous for its vibrant cultural heritage and breathtaking landscapes. Can you name the fluffy camelid creatures that are native to Peru, known for their soft and luxurious wool?
Yeah,
Yes, the alpacas,
they're my
llamas.
favorite.
My,
We visited an alpaca farm in Chile and it was incredible. They're so
oh,
sweet.
yes. We found the vicunas to be so amazing too.
Yeah.
I never even knew they existed. Yes. What is the longest mountain range in Chile called?
The Andes.
Very good. See, you got it. And that concludes the trivia.
All
You did
right.
great. You did
Oh, I'm disappointed about my first one. That's okay.
great. That's all right. That's all right. Yes. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Do you have any parting advice before we head out today?
Just do it. You won't regret it. It's such an amazing experience for your family, and you get to meet amazing people.
All right. See, just do it, family. All right. So, thank you again for joining us on the Our Offbeat Life podcast. It was a pleasure to speak with you. And listeners, please definitely, if this is your first episode that you've heard, take a look at some of the other amazing family stories that we have on the podcast and subscribe to hear more stories that are coming. All right, Colleen, thank you
Thank you
again
so
for your
much.
time. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye.